What was a great thing ruined by popularity? eBay. I remember being able to get an absolute bargain for almost anything I wanted. Now, every shop puts their shit on eBay. The other problem with eBay is it completely messed up people's perceptions of what stuff is worth. Someone will see some shitty thing on eBay listed for like $500 and be like, oh, that's what it's worth, but it's been listed for $500 for 2 years and nobody bought it cause that's crazy. Then someone at a flea market or Craigslist is like, oh, it's on eBay for $500, so I'll give you a deal, $450. If that happens, though, you can show them completed listings where nothing comes close to that price. If I'm not mistaken, there are some sellers that'll end auctions and relist items so that they show up as completed even though they didn't actually sell or something along those lines. In the same vein, Amazon. You absolutely cannot trust 95% of the sellers on there because it's almost always some knockoff cheap-ass Chinese shit from sellers with names in all caps. And nearly everything on Amazon has massive amounts of fake reviews. Install the FakeSpot extension for Chrome to reveal the level of ridiculousness. And you can't even sort the results properly. Sort by price is shit, sort by reviews is shit. FakeSpot has a lot of problems, though. It just guesses basing on words people use. I sell products on Amazon. I for sure never bought reviews or faked them, but FakeSpot showed one of my products with a C or D. And if someone relied on FakeSpot to judge a product, they would get false info and me with no recourse. Bothies. Basically, they're small cottages in remote parts of the Scottish Highlands that are left unlocked, free to be used for shelter by people traveling the mountains. They're not well furnished or anything, but they act as a freely usable weatherproof shelter for anyone to use in a country where summer usually just means the rain is slightly less frigid. It used to be that they weren't too well known. The hill walking community used them, maintained them, and everyone observed an unwritten code of conduct where you'd make sure to leave it tidy, clean and ready for the next person to use. However, they suddenly experienced an upsurge in awareness, and a lot of them suffered for it. People would go to them so they could have a piss up in a scenic location and leave them covered in rubbish and shit. Literal shit. They're normally refurbished from long abandoned houses and frequently don't have toilets, so they're equipped with a shovel to bury your waste. People seem to think they were free holiday homes that they could just take over. Some people just vandalized them for the fun of it. As a result, they're suffered quite a bit. They should offer shelter from bad weather and a safe place to sleep, but now you have a bunch of entitled lazy arseholes who go and wreck them. That's so sad. We have cabins like that up here in Alaska and the Yukon, but fortunately there are so few people that they are in good shape. To some extent, amusement or theme parks. They have to be popular to justify building new, state-of-the-art attractions, but eventually get so crowded that you need to buy special passes and get on a ride in less than 2 hours, and can barely even find a place to sit when you want to rest for a minute. I live near Six Flags Great America, outside of Chicago. Anytime I've gone in the last 10 years, it's been a ridiculous mass of humanity. More rides than ever, but every decent ride is like a 2-hour wait. As a resident of Orlando, this crowded issue is more than just in the parks. Universal has plans to make this Nintendo theme park or resort that is massive, and the neighborhood right across has justified issue with it concerning the amount of traffic that will come. This city is a tourist trap, and our infrastructure is barely hanging on with the growth in visitors. And yet I-4 is still a shit show LMAO. Any restaurant Anthony Bourdain featured in his shows. Even he acknowledged this. These fantastic gems would subsequently be overrun with diners that they suffered from overcrowding and lower standards. He did an episode of No Reservations once in Rome and didn't show any of the restaurants from the outside. If no one knows where the restaurants are, they won't be overcrowded with tourists and become inaccessible to the locals. Really respectable of him. IIRC, that was the episode with Asia Argento, who he was dating at the time. He didn't show some of the restaurants because that's where she takes her kids, and he didn't want to ruin it for her. That was parts unknown. The episode that the person you're replying to was talking about was No Reservations, the black and white Rome episode. I can no longer eat my favorite burger easily because of Guy Fieri. Edit. I feel I need to point out that I said I can't easily eat there. There is just a long ass line now. The food is still good. It's not ruined. Yep. Ate at a place that was on diners, drive-ins, and dives, and my sandwich had part of plastic bag in it. I don't eat at restaurants featured on that show anymore. Man vs. Food ruined my favorite grilled cheese. They turned into a chain and threw away the quality they used to have. Is this Melton Klee? Because I feel you on that one. I refuse to eat at any of the chains, and you'd really have to sell me hard to go to the original. I went to a ceviche restaurant he recommended in Cartagena, Colombia, and it luckily wasn't overrun. I think it's because people are still scared of Colombia. I went there too. But I noticed it was much more expensive than other ceviche places that were just as good in Cartagena. La Cevicheria was insanely good and well worth the cost, which is still cheap if you're coming from North America. Down there quite a bit. I prefer Submarino Ceviche y más. Not fancy, but as good as you'll get in CTG, and half the cost of La Cevicheria. Lo voy a anotar. Last year I did the Utah National and State Parks during the early spring off-season, and the measures they are taking to try to accommodate the massive number of visitors during the summer is incredible. Parking, lodging, sanitation, and safety are all becoming problems, and I hope that these places don't become victims of their own popularity. Arches really seems to attract people doing stupid, dangerous shit. The iconic Delicate Arch is like a magnet for morons who don't prepare for the trail, take risky selfies, vandalize and climb on things, and drink in places where there's 360 degrees of cliffs around you. Stupid and dangerous is a pretty low bar in many of those areas. We went to Arches on a family vacation back in '89 or '90. Dad planned us a long hike, something like 14 miles. Dad, Mom, my brother, 10, and I, 7. We had a lot of fun. Lots of cliffs, several places where we, the kids, had to jump across crevices that were probably 20 feet deep, and sections along the ridge of large formations, with a probably death level of fall on either side. I didn't find out until I was about 25, and we were talking about that trip that we were way out of our depth, and that Dad was legitimately worried that this was going to become a capital P problem somewhere along the way. My mom still gets mad at him about it from time to time because it was stupid and dangerous and put us at risk. His mistake? Underestimating the amount of water we should take for that hike and not appreciating the difference between 10 miles in the Smoky Mountains and 10 miles in the Utah desert. Side note. It's a testament to my parents' ability to keep their shit together under stress that we kids never knew that anything was wrong. They kept moving forward because anything else wasn't going to be helpful, and getting us scared would have been extremely counterproductive. Now it's a family lesson in both not making stupid decisions and in dealing with problems constructively. A man at Goblin Valley State Park in Utah moved a 170-million-year-old rock over a cliff, claiming he did it to save lives because it was going to fall off anyway and kill someone. His friend shot a video of him doing it and he yelled "yeah" as it fell. Sounds like it was for internet fame, storytelling, and to prove his masculinity. They pled guilty to criminal mischief, which in Utah can carry $300 up to $5,000 fines and jail time. They also lost their positions as Boy Scout leaders. They were Boy Scout leaders WTF. I am an Eagle Scout. One of the principles we learned in Scouts was to leave no trace. Was this troop just looking at that principle as optional? What the literal fuck? Scouts are people and some people are assholes. Don't let that discourage you though, there are plenty of Scouts who do live by the principles. I live in Egypt, and many of the most popular places are ruined by all the people there all year round. Yeah, having a KFC right across from the Sphinx is a total WTF. Holy shit, are you serious? All photos of the pyramid complex are taken from an angle which hides most of Cairo and shows them against a desert backdrop. This is what the other side looks like. Circle the KFC please. Have you ever noticed there's a threshold where a song gets too popular and will live on with the memory of everyone thinking it was overplayed and annoying? Despacito. The summer it was popular, I remember turning on the radio and switching through stations, and it was always on at least one. I'm impressed by my boyfriend's ability to completely somehow avoid all of that. When I showed him Despacito recently, he was like, "What is this? I've never heard it before," and I couldn't believe it because I didn't think anyone escaped it. Might be like me. I used to listen to the radio all the time, but for the past 5 years or so I've almost exclusively used streaming services. I found that when people make jokes about an overplayed song, I almost never have any idea what they're talking about. I either haven't heard the song because it's not in a genre I like, or, if I have, I threw it on one of my playlists and haven't overplayed it for myself. Still to this day can't listen to I Don't Want to Miss a Thing by Aerosmith. Fucking Armageddon. Oh god, remember that. Also, And I Will Always Love You. Whitney Houston. Finally, Celine Dion's Titanic song. Happy by Pharrell Williams that grew old real quick, but will everyone keep playing it? You bet. Okay, I'm going to mix it up. Silphium, the plant used as a form of likely very effective birth control in the ancient Mediterranean. For this reason and because it was apparently delicious, it gained popularity as a spice, aphrodisiac, and general cure-all, and became worth its weight in gold. Julius Caesar stockpiled the stuff, and it is one of the most plausible origins of the heart symbol and the association of that symbol with romance and doing the sex to people. Unfortunately, it only grew wild in and around Cyrene, and over-harvesting by the Romans after their takeover of the city drove Silphium into extinction by the time of Nero. And that's why we had to wait 2,000 years for the pill. Huh, that's interesting. Most of the historic monuments. The amount of markings all over them makes me sick. There is graffiti left by Roman soldiers and Napoleonic soldiers in Egypt, which was pretty neat to see tbh. Given enough time, graffiti becomes a part of the historical landmark itself. It's a catch-22 caused by an attachment to our own time. We see the landmark as something that needs to be preserved by, for, us, but the reality is we're in just as inconsequential a time of history as any. One of the most famous sites in the Hagia Sophia is where a Viking scratched his name in the marble. The scratch is protected and now treated as sacred, but it's functionally no different than you or I going to a structure built 200 to 400 years ago and doing the same. Don't get me wrong. I don't like it when people deface historical landmarks, but our outrage is fleeting and sometimes contributes to the perceived value of the relic. The function of graffiti isn't what's remarkable, it's the rarity. Those names written on the wall are probably the only surviving relics of their kind, representing historical forces clashing. It's the difference between a bullet hole from World War II and a bullet hole in my shed. It won't become more significant with time, because the world is full of our trash enough that 99% of what we make and do won't be interesting to future generations, no matter how much time passes. Interestingly enough, there is a huge amount of trash in the world because of World War II. At the end of the war, my grandfather turned over his service weapon, and they bulldozed it and tons of other equipment into the ocean in the Philippines because it was cheaper than to bring it all back. What constitutes trash is just as much a factor of when and why the trash was created. If someone found that old equipment nowadays, it would be of great interest to researchers and collectors. But it was still trash at one time. Furthermore, given enough time, the bullet hole in your shed would be of interest to researchers as well. Beaches. Once tourism starts, it usually has devastating effects on the flora and fauna. They had to close a beach off from the public in Thailand to give nature time to recover. Edit for grammar. Edit to give more information. I was talking about Maya Bay, which was made famous by the movie The Beach. Yes, the one with Leo. Despite its isolation, the bay attracts so many tourists there isn't even any room to lay down on the sand. The bay is closed off until officials believe the coral has rejuvenated sufficiently. They had a similar problem with a poppy reservation a year or so ago. There was a super bloom that resulted in fields of beautiful orange flowers. People kept visiting and taking pictures in the poppies. The problem was that these flowers were rather delicate. If you stepped on a patch too many times, there was a good chance the plants in that patch would die. They had designated paths all along reservation and signs telling people to stay on the path, but they kept ignoring them. There were a ton of dead patches in the poppy fields. There were also a ton of Instagram photos of people laying in patches of poppies. Same thing happening in the tulip fields in the Netherlands. Despite signs telling people to stick to the path, whole groups of people are just laying between the flowers and trampling them to get the perfect picture of themselves surrounded by a sea of tulips. It's very frustrating to witness how some people just really do not care at all how they leave the place, as long as they were able to take advantage of the beauty themselves. You just summed up humanity very nicely with that one sentence. Tragedy of the commons. Yep. I was super into libertarianism for about 10 minutes before I realized it was ridiculous, and people are dumb and evil and have to be told what they can and cannot do. Tragedy of the commons is exactly why it would never work. Visiting Iceland. I absolutely fell in love with the country when I was there, but the popularity of it means, like any other trendy tourist destination, that it's now ruined by tourists being jackasses. I grew up near a national park that is also now ruined by overcrowding, so maybe I have a lower threshold for that sort of stuff than most, but watching idiots stomping all over fragile geothermal features 2 steps away from the no walking on this area sign just boils my blood. Hey, I live there. Might also be worth the mention that it is now the most expensive country in Europe. Yes, I came here to say this as well. I'm convinced Reykjavik in the summer we went had more tourists than Icelanders. It felt like everything was one giant cruise ship style get on the bus get off the bus organized touring, but on land. The tourist information place acted like we were weird for asking about tickets for the local buses instead. And this is not just plain jackass tourists, but the entire city seemed to have gone all in on bringing in the tourism dollars. Definitely one of my weirdest traveling experiences ever. Airbnb. The idea of renting free room or sofa isn't bad at all. It turned into hard business when companies owning dozens of apartments rent them to tourists. Meanwhile, there is an apartment price and rent crisis. I guess living here isn't going to be affordable for middle class anymore. It's difficult as an Airbnb host with a room in the house available. We get a lot of middle-aged couples turning up expecting the whole place and also expecting the house to be something else. They just don't read the info. It's really frustrating because we're upfront about what to expect and have a really lovely room set up, but many people's experience of Airbnb is staying in commercial flats which has full-time maid service, so they come here expecting to get that despite being £30 a night. I've stayed in both room in people's houses and whole place to yourself Airbnbs, and I can't imagine not checking this detail. Also, every time I've stayed with people it's been lovely, so don't let the bastards grind you down. Keep up the good work. That and outrageous cleaning fees. Want to rent a condo for a weekend? That's a $150 cleaning fee. Renting a private bedroom? That's a $60 cleaning fee. Airbnb only makes sense these days if you're going with a group of people. Otherwise, I've found hotels to be significantly cheaper for a single or a couple. Airbnb cleaning fees are the modern equivalent of finding something for 99 cents on Amazon, then seeing $30 fee for shipping. It's definitely a bullshit fee and should be included in the price. Airbnb needs to update their app to let us filter that shit out with the price toggle. I'm tired of seeing $10 per night then realizing the total price is like $40. Mount Everest. Especially since there's only 1 or 2 days a season that people climb when conditions are optimal. There are literally queues of people waiting to go up some sections, and the overcrowding contributes to the number of deaths there each year. That's before you even start to think about the rubbish and trash left up there. The tourism to Mount Everest has become the primary income for a lot of people in that area, so it's not surprising the guides and Sherpas continue to take people up in large numbers, but it does seem sometimes like the numbers are unsustainable and downright dangerous. I've never been there and never will go, but it fascinates me so I read about it all the time. So much litter at or near the summit and all along the way up. The Sherpas do try to clean what they can, but up in the death zone. Every ounce of what you are carrying matters tremendously, so very little can be done to get rid of all the oxygen canisters and things left laying around. I've watched a couple of documentaries about it, and indeed it is a vital income for the region, but the damage it does to the mountain and danger it puts climbers in really is having a negative effect. I read that they are bringing in a law that fines people for not bringing down enough trash with them. I appreciate there is vital energy expenditure involved in this, but perhaps the people that can't do this shouldn't really be climbing the mountain in the first place. Yeah, I completely agree. There are certainly a lot of people that shouldn't be anywhere that mountain, but they have enough money that they don't get refused. That's where the problem lies. I've read up on a lot of stories about those Sherpas, and a lot of the time they're basically carrying these underqualified people up to the summit and back, putting their lives in mortal danger several times a year just for a few extra dollars which they absolutely need. Plastic, it is a great material, but mankind does not know how to use it properly. We have this super strong, super lightweight, corrosive resistant material that can be made into any shape at a very low cost, it lasts forever, and we use it for disposable packaging. It's funny, when I was a kid the environmentalists were certain that paper shopping bags would destroy the planet, but plastic bags would be the thing to keep the planet safe. Now, they are questioning the reusable cloth bags. Just stuff your groceries in your pockets. Drones. They're an amazing and useful tool for surveyors, photographers, inspectors, filmmakers, etc. But they're so ubiquitous, Johnny Dumbass can go buy one at Best Buy and crash it into a bald eagle nest and make the rest of us who have gone through training and FAA licensing look bad. It's awful on some of the FPV and drone subreddits. Look at my 3-mile NLOS flight. Or my operations over people. Or check out this plane. And you get downvoted for pointing out there are rules and that folks should abide by them. Where can I find the rules? I want to get a small one to play around with at local parks and open spaces. I definitely don't want to be an asshole doing it though. Groove Shark. Effectively free Spotify Premium with every single song that you could think of on it. It was fucking awesome. I imagine its popularity drew too much attention to its multiple blatant copyright violations. It was fun while it lasted, though. Free music is nice and all, but the part of Groove Shark that I miss the most is the user-curated radio stations. I love how it turned listening to background music while I study into almost a social experience, with people chatting and suggesting songs in the background. There's nothing stopping Spotify or any other legal streaming service from implementing a similar feature. Sadly, I assume there just isn't any demand. The Joker Stairs in the Bronx was a nice little piece of architecture in a quiet area of High Bridge. Now Instagram dipshits are ruining it. There's more trash there than ever before. I feel bad for the local residents who have to put up with it. The Exorcist steps near Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. used to be the same, but it subsided eventually. You still get people taking a lot of pictures and such, especially around Halloween, but at one time it was a major tourist attraction in a town full of major tourist attractions. Add that to the long list of places Instagram dipshits have ruined. The California Super Bloom. Yik Yak. I loved Yik Yak in college. It was hilarious and had juicy anonymous gossip on it, and it was a great place to just put down random thoughts. Then it started growing and people started using it for making blatantly racist comments anonymously. That led to more shit that assholes would put on there, like putting people's full names in their stories and making bomb threats. A great example of a few people ruining it for everyone else. Fuck, Yik Yak was the best. No other app managed to catch on as heavily at my college either after it shut down. RIP, yeah, the devs making people use real names is what really killed it. I can see why they wanted to after some of the shit that happened though. Remember back when your father knew a faster alternative route around a major traffic jam that actually was faster? Since the handheld availability of real-time traffic data and route optimization by Google Maps, an equilibrium of travel time has established such that everyone knows what the best route is, and the traffic jam actually takes as long as the alternative route. I think that the real thing that is ruined in this scenario is your commute. There are too many people on the damn roads, all going to the same general location. GPS or no GPS at certain times of the day, week or season, it is impossible to go anywhere without sitting in traffic. I agree. I think if anything, GPS has helped keep all routes as quick as they can be given the amount of people on the road these days. It spreads everyone out across several routes.
Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video. Tell me what you dislike or love about this video, so please comment below and hit the bell icon so you're notified anytime a new video is released. This is a WeCrow Media production.